Barnsley win the South Yorkshire derby while there are big results at the bottom end of the table ahead of another important fixture on Tuesday night. Welcome to the League One Lowdown review episode. Hello and welcome to the League One Lowdown. This is brought to you from the Deck Podcast Network. I'm Seb Jones, joined as ever by Jamie Johnson. Jamie, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Seb. How are you?
Good, yes, good, thank you. Ready to chat about a bit more of excitement in terms of the fixtures we're going to chat about compared to last week. So we made it through last week and this week, more to chat about, which is good. We'll get started straight away and we'll get going into the game I was at, the big South Yorkshire derby, rivalry, plenty in this one between Rotherham and Barnsley. Two sides that have actually dropped off are at risk of becoming sort of a mid-table club come the end of the season. So I think I sort of set it quite nicely in terms of a bit of a flat derby, I think. Particularly that first half, it was a 12:30 kick-off. It just felt a little bit flat. Two teams that are both out of form. And, it did. Not the most fierce derby I've ever attended, I'll tell you. But yeah, Barnsley managed to grab the win, courtesy of a penalty. One of four penalties I think probably should have been given in this game. Adam Phillips.
I've seen the one that was the handball that wasn't given. That was the most egregious one.
Yeah, they're right in front of me. It's obviously if it's just the Rotherham defenders just decided to play basketball in the middle of the game.
Well, yeah, that's literally what it looked like, wasn't it? And then there was the one at the other end, which was a bit of I think it was Adam Phillips running through. It got tugged back. Yeah. But you got the penalty in then. But I mean, you said that it wasn't the most exciting derby. I mean, we always talk about Barnsley when they lose. So I mean, we're happy that you get to talk about them winning this week. But even if it was a flat game and a bit of a dull one at times, you've won the derby, and perhaps even more important than that, it ends your bad run, and you can kick on now.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah, I think it was 5 games about to win, something along those lines. It was really bad form. 6 even, yeah. It's a really bad form. We covered this in the last few weeks. Sort of some people calling for Darrell Clark to go. Some people sort of, it's still, in fairness, despite the win, we're calling for the board to change. And I think the win sort of papers over the cracks a little bit. But a win is a win at the end of the day. It's 3 points. In fairness, actually, results later on that afternoon went in our favour. So prior to the match, we were 10 points off the playoffs. We're now 7 points off the playoffs, which I know still, is still it's going to still be some task to get there. But I wouldn't rule us out at this stage, given as I mentioned, results on Saturday went in our favour, and if we just keep winning, that's important for us. We just have to keep winning, and then we rely on results that way. If we don't keep picking up good results, then we're absolutely out of it in terms of the playoff race.
You just have to look after yourself, can't you?
Exactly. We just have to keep winning and hope results like we did on Saturday go in our favour, just to help narrow that gap. But you're right, absolutely, in terms of a long-awaited win, and to get it in the derby, I think was sort of doubly as pleasing, really. Things have not been great, in the past few weeks, but to get that, to get the clean sheet as well, I think was even more impressive as well. Sort of a few factors in that. Mark Roberts coming back from suspension after 3 games out, just to have that experienced defender in the middle of the back three. I think he's probably one of our best defenders at the club, and he came in for Donovan Pines, who I think previously sort of looked a bit shaky when the ball comes over the top, whereas Roberts deals with that superbly. And also a shout out to Jackson Smith, who came off the bench. He's a goalkeeper. Joe Gauci got injured in the game. He went down once and then got treatment, continued, and went down again, and then came off. Jackson Smith actually made his debut for the club. We must have been about 60, 70 minutes on the clock. So obviously, when Rotherham were just putting crosses into the box and just having chances after chance. In fairness, Jackson Smith on his debut stood tall and didn't let anything go past him. So a couple of sort of shout outs in terms of the Barnsley back line. As for Rotherham, I think Steve Evans said it himself, didn't he? That Barnsley were just better all over the pitch.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, this was those two games, like you mentioned, two teams, I beg your pardon, that just needed a win, and obviously only one can get it at the end of the day, and that was Barnsley. And it means Rotherham are now 6 without victory, 5 in the league, and they're only 6 points ahead of the relegation zone. You say Barnsley is 7 off from off the playoffs, and that gap can close, and they're playing in midweek, as we're going to talk about later on. Rotherham, though, they're slowly starting to slide down the table again, and they just look a bit lost, is how I would describe them. Obviously, you've actually seen them play in person, so I'll get your thought on that in a second. And then the other thing I'll put to you is something from the preview podcast. Callum and Sam mentioned they were calling it El Sakiko between Clark and Steve Evans, and obviously Clark has escaped that with a victory. Do you think Steve Evans could be on the chopping block? And I guess there's 2 points for you there.
Yeah, I don't know, because the expectation was there at the start of the season for Rotherham, and quite early on it became pretty clear that that expectation wasn't going to be met. So I think the opportunity to sack Evans has sort of gone, maybe. I think even if they sack him now, they're not going to do better without him in terms of this season. But then I guess it just adds a heat of pressure for next season. I don't think he's in trouble. I think the board will stick with him.
See out the season.
See out the season. They know what he's like. They know what he's capable of doing, and for whatever reason, it just hasn't clicked this season. So then, I guess the expectation will be to go next year. I think Rotherham have just been unlucky. Same with Barnsley, in fairness, that they're just there's a lot of strong teams this year in the division that perhaps there hadn't been a few years back, when Barnsley and Rotherham might have got automatic promotion. The likes of Wrexham, Birmingham, Wycombe, Stockport are all spending a good amount of money. And Barnsley and Rotherham are just not quite able to compete with the levels of money, and that's sort of shown in the league table and in terms of the players that they're bringing in as well. So, yeah, I think Steve Evans is fine. I think they'll see him out to the end of the season and start again next year. Obviously, they brought in a lot of players over the summer, so I don't think he's at risk, really. In terms of Rotherham, what was your second question about Rotherham?
Because I think the question really is that I think they look lost when you look at the results and the performances on paper. But did that come across when you see them live at the New York? Did they look like a team that was lost?
Yeah, a little bit. In fairness, it was often that sort of final ball, really. When there was a player in the box, rather than crossing in, they'd shoot from distance, or they would, I don't know, just it's just that final ball, really, which I guess shows that plays a little bit lost, lack of communication between them as well. It just wasn't clicking for Rotherham at all. They had a good spell actually straight away in that second half, but then Barnsley got the penalty, scored the penalty, and then 1-0 up, and then the momentum just seemed to be with Barnsley. So apart from that 10 minutes after the into the second half, they just didn't really impress at all. Really, they did look lost. I think that's a good way to sum it up. Really, they just didn't really know what they're doing. Steve Evans said afterwards that Barnsley were the best, in all areas across the game, and they switched it at half time to play Green up top, sort of had a bit more pace in place of Hugo, but that just didn't work at all, really. So they did look lost, Rotherham, and they need to win, and they need to win fast. It's now 6 games without a win, and concern has got to be growing for the Millers at this point. We'll move on now away from South Yorkshire to chat about two sides pushing for the playoff spots. Actually, they're both now on the same amount of points in the league, and that is between Bolton and Leyton Orient. A clash here, as I mentioned, that sort of two sides in very similar positions, Jamie.
Yeah, exactly. Leyton Orient have hung on to that 6th place spot with a few results sort of either side of them going their way. But Bolton win this one, and as you say, puts them level on points with Leyton Orient, level on points with the playoffs, their goal difference being the thing keeping them out. But that good start for Steven Schumacher, well, it continues, doesn't it? It's 3 league wins in a row since joining. This one not quite as exciting as the rest, though they did come back from behind to win. McAtee and Morley penalty, completing a comeback in a game that looked pretty even, at least on stats on paper. And I've got a couple of bits on Leyton Orient in just a second, but really the focus, obviously Bolton, their victory, and they're on a real uptick at the minute since the new manager came in, and I think it's something Sam put on the Twitter, the X feed over the weekend, was that Ian Everett's, one of his comments was, if you get rid of me, nothing's going to change. Well, it already has, hasn't it? And 3 games in the league for the new manager, and they've picked up 9 points, and they're immediately knocking on the door of the playoffs, and they're in a really good position at the minute, and they're looking really good, and they're playing some good football, and I think it's all looking really rosy for Bolton at the minute.
Yeah, I'd agree, absolutely. Yeah, Bolton. I forgot having said that. Actually, it's quite funny looking back. Bolton are a great forward, and Schumacher. We know what he brings as a manager, and he's got the ground running in terms of coming in, making that impact straight away. He's had success at Plymouth, at Stoke. It didn't quite fall for him, but probably pushing above his level there a little bit, if you ask me. But League One, he's a very good manager, and I think Bolton have got that appointment superb. If they brought the wrong player in, then wrong manager in, then it could have got even a hell of a lot worse for Bolton. But the match just seems to be perfect with Schumacher.
Well, he's got promotion out of the division before, hasn't he? Exactly. He's got that experience, and he knows what to do to get a team out of the division, and that's exactly what Bolton needed and wanted when they were looking for a manager a month ago or whatever it was.
Yeah, exactly. And Barry being knocked out of the EFL Trophy, results have actually gone in their favour pretty well. As for Leyton Orient, they cling on to the 6th spot. They face a tough match on Tuesday, and this one, it's never nice losing to a side that are around you in the league table, is it?
Yeah, this was just a bit of a stumbling block, I feel like is the best way to describe it. As we say, still in the top 6 and their first league loss in 4 games, but a frustrating one, I think, on the face of it, in that they're on this good run and everyone talks about their good run. And obviously they played Lincoln last week and we spoke about that game, and they scored that last-minute winner in extra time and in added time, and they looked like a team that are going to get in the playoffs because they're the sort of teams that score those late goals. Perhaps not the best team. It was pretty even. Second half, Lincoln were better in that game. They weren't better in the second half of the game this weekend, but we'll get to that. And Leyton Orient got the late goal. They carried on, they fought, and they got the win in the end. And that's what the good teams do. But this week, a little bit of a frustrating one. The other thing to bring out really is Cooper went off injured, and that leaves just the 2 fit centre-backs for Leyton Orient, which is obviously a real struggle when they go into midweek to Birmingham, as we'll mention in just a second. But that would be the only downside of the intricacies of the performance. But it's obviously a disappointing loss overall that they're losing to someone fighting for the same spot in the table, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned that injury as well. It's always a shame, really, when someone in the core of your defence suffers an injury, especially ahead of such a big run for the club. You mentioned that Birmingham game. That's on Tuesday night. So big fixture between the two sides. Birmingham obviously high flying at the top. Leyton Orient still want to keep that playoff spot, keep that gap between the other sides chasing for it. How do you see this one going?
I think it's hard to say I don't see it going for Birmingham because they're at home and it's Birmingham at the end of the day, and they're at the top of the table for a reason. They're 6 points ahead of Wycombe now, and they could stretch that to 9 points with still having a game in hand afterwards. And at home this season, they remain unbeaten. So I don't think I can look past Birmingham for very obvious reasons. But I don't think it's going to be an easy game for them. I think it'll be close, perhaps a 2-1 like this one has been at the weekend. And I think they'll put up a fight, Leyton Orient, and that is what they do. They fight. It's Richie Wellens' team. They're going to scrap and claw to try and find a way to win. They're not one of those teams, one of those managers, Rich Wellens, who is always strapped and constrained by an ideology, a philosophy. He's very willing to change, to adapt, and be pragmatic, which is what you need. And when you're playing these big teams, it's definitely what you need. But I find it hard to look past Birmingham in terms of the win in this one. Though Leyton Orient, if they can, they only go then a couple of points behind third place Wrexham, though they do play today, Sunday, at time of recording, Wrexham. So they're putting themselves a little bit closer is the kind of the point I'm making. And they're making a little bit more of a gap between themselves and that pack, which is catching up in Charlton, Bolton, even Reading a little bit further off. Those people that are catching up Barnsley, I'll stick them in there for yourself. They can put a little bit of breathing space between them with a victory on Tuesday night, though I don't think they'll manage just that.
No, I agree with you. I think Leyton Orient, though, will take massive sort of credit and I guess with the win against Wrexham a few weeks ago, I guess that will give them sort of massive reasoning as to, though, we've faced one of the other big teams in the league that are flying high. Let's use that confidence. Let's use that victory and take that into the game against Birmingham. So you're right in terms of that they will put up a fight. They've evidently got results before against some of the bigger sides, but yeah, I'm agreeing with you in terms of Birmingham just got too much quality on show. But yeah, I think Leyton Orient will not to sort of let them bypass, as we've perhaps seen Birmingham when they're facing some of the other teams in the league. They'll stand the ground and should be an entertaining one. But I do see Birmingham clinching that one. We'll move on to the game you were at, Jamie, which involved Lincoln and Burton Albion. Just a one goal in this one, and not in favour of the side that you wanted, perhaps.
Well, no, I don't know if you've seen the document. We share a document sort of pre-podcast with sort of a few notes and things, a bit of a running order, if you like. And my one-word description I put on there, I can't say on the podcast, is the word I used to describe the game.
I've seen that, yeah.
But it was dire. Really, really awful game of football. But exactly what I anticipated, and I think quite a few people did. It's the last thing I said when I left the house to walk over to the ground. The last thing I said was they'll lose 1-0 today, and that's exactly what happened. And it was a 92nd minute. Charlie Webster is a real sort of clutch player in this past week. They've got two victories by 1-0, Burton, in this past week, and he scored both goals, Charlie Webster, and he had the freedom of Lincoln really in the centre of the box. The ball came to him at the edge of the box, couple of touches, and all the defenders stood off him. I don't really know what was going on there, but it was a good finish, and the scenes in the away end were absolutely fantastic. They were really, really loud. They have to say they were obviously they're going to be 92nd minute winner, but the home end sort of emptied, and they were singing "Don't Worry About a Thing," the Bob Marley song, and they were really, really sort of quite impressive, the Burton support, and they were after the game saying we are staying up, all that sort of stuff, and there's a real belief there. And Gary Bowyer, I think, is a real important cog of that. I will talk about the game, unfortunately, in just a minute, but the bit I wanted to pick out was when that goal went in the moment of stress that I realised I'd have to rewrite half my match report, that I was just sat just looking down from where we are at the top of the main stand down towards the Burton bench, and Gary Bowyer was going absolutely insane, celebrating, and then about 10 seconds later was grabbing hold of everyone and pulling them off the pitch, because all the subs and bench went onto the pitch. He was pulling them off and sort of telling everyone to calm down and focus and calm down and get on with the job. And I think that immediate switch is obviously, that's what a manager should be doing, but it shows that the experience, the calmness, the level-headedness that he's got, and that is what will keep them up if they do manage to stay up. It will be Gary Bowyer. And I was speaking to a couple of people who'd come up from Burton, sort of in the media room, and they were all saying the same thing. It's been 2 seasons in one. One person said to me, completely different from the previous manager, with Gary Bowyer coming in, and it showed like that. They played well, did Burton, in moments, and that's what they're always going to do. It's always what they're going to do for the rest of the season: play well and take their chances when they need to. Lincoln started all right, first 5 or 10 minutes, and then after that, Burton just shut them down really for a vast majority of the game and didn't create anything. They had one clear-cut chance and they scored it, as Lincoln had a few clear-cut chances and didn't find the back of the net. The only other contentious point was Sam Clucas's disallowed goal. I don't know if you've seen it, Seb, but it was his home debut of 15 years and 6 months and something or other after his original debut for the club. This was his first home game, and he sort of slalomed through, danced past 3 or 4, got into the box, was about to shoot, and then off the ball, Jovan Makama pulls down the last defender who was about to run across and sort of get the foot in front of Sam Clucas. I think he'd have scored anyway, really. But he's pulled him down, and the referees give it straight away, and I think that took a lot of guts from the referee. I think it's the right decision, that he's seen the foul, and I think it takes a lot to give that decision. And the right one for me. So that was the contentious point. They had a goal disallowed for offside as well, but that seems like a weekly occurrence at the minute for Lincoln. And it was overall really just a frustrating watch, is how I described it. They were really just lacking ideas. They were lacking fight, is one of the words I put down. That when a team tries to rough them up and make things slow and make things physical, then they wilter. And it just keeps happening. Every time they play these sort of teams, they just keep falling into the same trap. And a late goal again steals 1 point, which they obviously would have got otherwise.
In terms of Burton, I guess we'll start with, and then we'll come back to Lincoln. That result actually only puts them 2 points away from safety, which is a magnificent effort given the position they were in. Pre Gary Boyer, just the impact they've had. I mean, yes. It's Bristol, Rovers and Peterborough that are above there, and they do have games in hand. So it may be more than 2, in a few weeks' time when the game in hand are played. But for now, 2 points. It's magnificent. It's incredible, really. As mentioned, given the position they were in, Gary Boyer, you mentioned sort of the people you've spoke to. Clearly, there's a belief and a backing of Gary Boyer. Obviously, not just the playing staff, but clearly everyone else around Burton Albion, the fans as well. You mentioned the scenes at full time. We are saying up, and rightly so. They are. It's doable. It's not one of those where you think, oh, just grab the win. But, it's not, doesn't mean anything as such, but it's absolutely doable. And I think full credit to Gary Boyer, full credit for Burton Albion, having waited so long to appoint a manager. We spoke about this many times on here. Having Tom Hounsell in as interim manager to then get the appointment right. They've got it bang on, haven't they?
Well, exactly that, and it's one of the things I sort of mentioned in I did a sort of 4 key takeaways for the Deccan article I wrote, and one of the things I picked out was that they're really hard to beat, and there's a reason they've only lost 1 of their last 9 games now, and they're that step closer to safety because they're hard to beat. They set themselves up to be hard to beat, and Bodvarsson went off injured, and I don't know how serious that is, but I was expecting him to be the real danger man. He had a couple of shots in the first half, but nothing much. But they get the goal anyway, even with that sort of knock back of him going off injured. But exactly the word to use, the phrase to use is that they're hard to beat, and that is all you need to be down the bottom of the table. You're fighting for something, and you're fighting for more than a Lincoln, than a Wigan, a Stevenage in mid-table for those teams who are not going to go up, they're not going to go down. They need to stop themselves just wandering to the end of the season, if you like. But a team like Burton Albion have a lot to fight for, and they show that intensity, that desire is probably the best word for it. And they showed all of that, all of those qualities against Lincoln, and got, I think, a deserved victory. Lincoln were really off it, but all credit to Burton. And I feel like I've spoke a lot negative about Lincoln, but all credit to Burton, as I say, that they've deserved it. Really, they took their chance. They did, their game plan worked. And it's as easy as that. They did a job over Lincoln, and they're on the right track for staying up, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And the next Lincoln game is actually a rivalry between us two, between the review podcast hosts. So that this time next week, we'll be hopefully chatting about a Barnsley win against Lincoln. We're going to take.
You probably will, actually.
We'll take a short break. We'll be back the other side of it to chat about some of the relegation threatened sides in the division. Back in a moment. Hello and welcome back to the League One Lowdown with myself, Seb Jones, joined as ever by Jamie Johnson. We've chatted about some of the League One teams pushing for promotion and playoffs and their results over the weekend. We're now going to move to chat about some results over the weekend that affect the sides near the bottom. And we'll start with a big one, a big surprise one, I think, in the game between Huddersfield and Peterborough. Huddersfield have obviously been on bad run themselves, but then got the derby win against Barnsley last weekend, so you'd have thought they had a bit of momentum behind them. But that wasn't the case here, Jamie.
Yeah, shock of the weekend, this one, isn't it? I guess aside from the final game we'll talk about later on, but a real shock, Peterborough going to the John Smiths, as they used to call it, and getting a win, and it keeps them just above the relegation zone, 2 points ahead of Burton, who we just spoke about, and with a game in hand, and they must win that game in hand. I'm not quite sure who it's against, if I'm honest. But but they have to win it, and they just have to keep winning. And more importantly, really, than winning that specific game, they just have to keep winning. And this is a step in the right direction for them. A goal in the 4th minute of first half injury time, and it just keeps them going. Huddersfield, I guess we'll talk about them in just a second, but Peterborough, it's only their second League One win in 8 games.
Wow.
But it really, really must needed, wasn't it? And they got it, is the important thing at the end of the day. And it just keeps them above that drop zone, as I mentioned, because if they lost, they were in the drop zone because Burton, as we obviously just mentioned before the break, won. So it was a really, really important 3 points before the game, and obviously afterwards it turned out to be even more important perhaps. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how they played really in terms of if they deserved it or not. I know Huddersfield were particularly poor, but they've got the win, and that's the important thing. And Hector Cipriano with it. One of my friends is a Peterborough fan, was calling him Hector the Protector. Well, he's Hector the scorer as well, getting the goal here.
I like the one. That's good. Yeah, Peterborough. Yeah, you're right in terms of that they're in a sacred position, really, in that because they've got the pressure from those in the bottom 4, and actually those in the bottom 4 have got good results that they managed to pick up. They themselves have got pressure in terms of keeping results themselves, because they could easily, as you sort of just mentioned, that they could easily drop it into that bottom 4 if results just don't go their way at all. So picking up this one is massive, not only for them in the league table, but actually it affects Huddersfield as well a little bit, in that they have got pressure from the sides pushing it into playoffs. Now the gap between Huddersfield and Leyton Orient is to 2 points, and then between Huddersfield and Charlton in 7th is also 2 points. So actually they're not like, they're feeling the pressure as well, really. They had a couple of good results. I forgot the midweek game that they won against Shrewsbury as well. So a couple of good results, a couple of wins on the bounce, and then to lose this one will really sort of upset Huddersfield and upset Michael Duff, and just add to pressure further, really, for them to keep that playoff spot. And to do that, they just have to keep winning.
Yeah, a bit of a kick in the teeth, wasn't it, really? That they get those 2 good wins on the bounce against Barnsley, and in midweek against a Shrewsbury team who are like Burton, fighting and scrapping for their lives. And this one, they've just knocked them back. The only positive, really, is that Stockport, as we will talk about, and Leyton Orient, as we already have, also lost. So they've not lost ground in that sort of fight. But Charlton have gained pace on them. Bolton have as well. And they're only 2 points, as you mentioned there, Seb, away from not being in the playoffs. But I guess the most important bit being that they had 0 shots on target in this game. They had 12 shots, none on target, and if you don't have a shot on target, you can't score a goal. It's as simple as that, isn't it? And that, I think, will be the disappointing thing. Not only losing to Peterborough, which is a bad result in itself, losing to, I know Peterborough are a big name club, but losing to someone who are 5th bottom in the table is a bad result for someone like Huddersfield. Yeah. But to do it in the manner they did, to have no shots on target, and that indicates that they just weren't creating enough chances.
Yeah, it was 5th from top versus 5th from bottom. And it just really wasn't good enough from the side in 5th Huddersfield. And I think, all credit to Peterborough. Things definitely haven't gone their way this season, but they've picked up a solid result, clean sheet in that as well, to go away to Huddersfield. I think it's good. Really good going for them. It's worth noting as well, actually, over the Wrexham that play on Sunday, as you alluded to earlier. Actually, all of the top 6 did not win at all on Saturday. Yeah. 3 defeats and 2 draws within that, which I think is quite interesting. Whereas the teams from 6th below actually all managed to pick up 3 points. So it just shows that actually the pressure is continually on. It's not worth getting complacent about having your playoff spot, because there is that immediate pressure from the sides just below as well. So credit to Peterborough. Huddersfield as well will need to get back on track and need to get another good result very soon. They play on Tuesday. I'm sure we'll come to cover them a little bit later on. As for Peterborough, they have got the AFL Trophy semi-final on Wednesday against Wrexham, so a chance to get to Wembley in that one. We'll move on now to chat about the upcoming game, Wigan Huddersfield, which I briefly mentioned there. What do you make to this one? Wigan in 6th deep, they're at home. Huddersfield going away, a chance to sort of bounce back quickly.
Yeah, I mean, just on what you mentioned in terms of Peterborough, their EFL Trophy game in midweek, you could view it as a distraction, but I think it could really be a positive. Obviously, getting to Wembley is a positive no matter what, and it could be a chance to give them another boost. Win on Saturday, upset the odds against Wrexham, get to the final, and that could really kick on Peterborough into sort of a good mood around the place, which is always important.
For sure, yeah.
On Huddersfield, you mentioned obviously they're playing Wigan, which was one of the teams involved in that up the top of the table. No one picking up really many points. They drew with Wycombe. A result probably should be viewed in isolation. In that they're playing Wycombe, no one's really expecting Wigan to go over there and win, and obviously they didn't do that in the end. They're 6 without victory in all competitions, and they just need to pick up points. This is the other thing to bring out really. They're only 4 points from safety, and they're going to be dragged into a scrap down the bottom of the table if they're not too careful, if they're not already in it. A couple of teams we'll talk about in a minute are probably pushing a little bit out of that now with certain results, but Wigan are very much in that fight now, only 4 points above the drop zone, so they need the points for that reason. Huddersfield obviously need the points after a really bad defeat at the weekend and a bad performance, and they need the points to stay where they are and to consolidate their position in the playoffs. So it's a big game all around. I spoke to Ed, who is the Football League world writer for Wigan, and he mentioned that perhaps, as I say, that the Wycombe game should be viewed in isolation, not really taken into account on the wider picture, though this Huddersfield game I think should be, and I think probably will, come win or loss.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of Huddersfield, I mentioned that sort of in when I was asking the question. It's a quick chance to turn around and to get that result quickly, really back on track after a disappointing result against Peterborough at the weekend. That wouldn't have done Michael of any favourites really, and very disappointing. I imagine around the camp. Hurricane, I think, out as well with an injury. So a couple of things going against their way, but it takes a side in the playoffs that sort of go against when things are going against the tide to sort of stand firm, and Michael, I'm sure, will reinforce that, and I'm sure will be very grateful that he's got an early opportunity to put things right away at Wigan on Tuesday. We'll move to chat about Northampton against Bristol Rovers. So how did this one fare, Jamie?
It's a strange one, this, isn't it? Obviously, it's two teams who are right in the same position in the table, 17th and 19th now, only 1 point separating them, and Northampton have leapfrogged Bristol Rovers, pushing themselves above that relegation scrap at the minute, and they were poor defensively, Bristol Rovers, by all accounts, and that obviously seemed to cost them. And the other side of things, that Northampton were very impressive, and it's 3 out of 4 in terms of victories for them. Wrexham, the only blemish on that record. And from what I'm hearing, is that the fans are starting to get behind Kevin Nolan, and that is always a positive sign, isn't it? That the fans are getting behind the manager, they're buying into it, and they obviously believe that will that Kevin Nolan and the way they're playing at the minute will keep them in the division. And as it stands, they're 4 points, as I say, above the drop zone. And this is a good result. They play on Tuesday night, as we'll mention in just a second, but a really good result for Northampton in terms of just getting out of that scrap a little bit, just creating a little bit of breathing space. Though for Bristol Rovers, a really chastening defeat, I would say.
Yeah, this is. It's not quite a relegation 6-pointer, but it's it was a near relegation 6-pointer, if that makes sense. Two sides sort of just above that relegation drop, and actually you're right in terms of it's Bristol Rovers that come out of that in a worse position, only 3 points away from that drop zone, and Peterborough. Only Peterborough sitting in between them and Burton, who occupy that final spot. And Northampton are absolutely picking up the form. Kevin Nolan has steadied the ship really since he's come in, and I think you're right in terms of that. That's been well perceived, well taken by the fans. Seem to have got on board a couple of really good results in there. You mentioned the 3 wins out of 4. Taking away that Wrexham defeat, but a win against Huddersfield, a win against Mansfield, and then obviously the Bristol Rovers result on Saturday as well. Some important victories in there, and against some good sides. I know Huddersfield were on a bit of a bad run of form, but nevertheless, you still have to beat what's in front of you.
Yeah, they're the teams that need to be beaten, really. Those teams around them, in terms of Mansfield and Bristol Rovers here, they're the teams they need to beat. Yeah. Because obviously they're the ones you're fighting for the same positions for. And they got Exeter after the midweek game against Barnsley, which is obviously another one to put in that category. So they're winning the right games, if that can never be said, and they just want to keep that going, really.
Yeah, they will, and as for Bristol Rovers, they've just got to stand firm a little bit more. That's now 2 defeats on the bounce, and they don't play midweek, so at least sort of extra time on the training pitch. And when they do play, it's at home to Rotherham, who obviously we spoke about at the top, just had defeat against Barnsley, and they're on a bad run of form. So maybe another opportunity there for Bristol Rovers to capitalise.
Well, they seem to have turned a corner, hadn't they, under the new manager? They seem to have turned back. And when you look at it in terms of the issue, obviously, you can look at it at face value, but their top goal scorer has 4 goals. It's joint. Omachiri and Isaac Hutchinson in the league have got 4 goals, and that isn't conducive to winning many games of football, isn't it? There are teams who have scored less in the division, but not exactly many. And when you're down the bottom end of the table, your defence is obviously not going to be that good, or you wouldn't be there. So you need your attack to bail you out at times, and that isn't happening at the moment for Bristol Rovers.
No, that is true, and and clearly they need to turn back again the corner and pick up a few good results. As for Northampton Town, first midweek home game against Barnsley. This one rearranged from when it was snowing all the way back in November. I think it's been a long way to bum. Maybe even January. Anyway, it's rearranged fixture Tuesday night.
It snowed at some point. Definitely snowed at the start of January.
Yeah, it might have been probably more January. Yeah, big fixture. It was January. Big fixture.
I remember we were sat here and we had 2 games to talk about, or something like that. Everyone had got cancelled, all the games.
That was a bleak point of the league lowdown. Yeah, two big teams really at both ends of the table that will want a result from this one. It finished 2 apiece in the reverse fixture. Could it end the same this time round? Maybe.
I mean, I'll cede to your superior knowledge in terms of Barnsley in just a second, but I think it's one of those where both teams will fancy the points. Obviously, Barnsley high up the table are going to look at that and go, yeah, you fancy beating the teams down the bottom, and Northampton are going to look at it and good win at the weekend, a good run of form, and Barnsley aren't on a good run of form. Obviously, they will hope that they've stopped that rather than it being a flash in the pan against Rotherham on Saturday, as we spoke about earlier on, and they will fancy it too. So that's how I see it, that both teams will go into it thinking they can win the game of football, and that could end up another 2-2. I think it could be an exciting game, this one, really.
Yeah.
Both teams fighting for it, hammer and tongs, if you like to use that old phrase. And I think this could be a decent game of football. But yeah, what say you, Seb?
Yeah, I agree in terms of you're right in terms of both sides are going for this. Both sides need the win for different reasons, of course. I just feel Barnsley will think this is a not an easy hit as such, but a team that they could easily get points against. And that's no disrespect to Northampton, but I fear, I think that Barnsley will see this as a little bit of a rollover. Obviously, no game in League One is as straightforward as that, but I think it's a side that they believe they'll have more quality. They've got more in different areas of the pitch than Northampton do have. So I think Barnsley will be confident in this one. And it's a shame, actually, because the original fixture was when it was January, and it was set to be when Barnsley were in that good run of form, just sort of post-Christmas. So it almost sort of got rearranged. I'm not blaming that for a bad run of form, by the way, but I think it almost got postponed at a bad time.
At the
really.
wrong
so
time.
The wrong time. Barnsley have to use this to then pick up another good form of themselves. Victory at the weekend against Rotherham, another victory in here would not go amiss at all, and then a home game against Lincoln. So it's a good chance to pick up points against sides that are not really going to cause us too much threat in terms of Northampton and then Lincoln after that as well. So yeah, Northampton, I think Barnsley will see that they can get the win in this one, and fingers crossed that they do, because they need it. We'll move on to the last game we're going to look at in detail, and I think there's 2 things to take away from this one. First of all, the result itself, and second of all, I guess a late managerial change in the season, and this one's the game between Cambridge and Stockport. We'll start with the result itself, and a pretty surprising one, I think, given given Stockport and given where they are in the league and the results that they've managed to pick up. Cambridge winning against them at home.
Yeah, real shock. This one, a real shock. The first win in 6 games for Cambridge, and it's a new manager bounce as well. It's an old manager bounce. Obviously, Neil Harris coming back and Mark Bonner coming back as director of football, as we'll discuss in just a second. But yeah, I mean, as I say, a real shock. I couldn't quite believe it when I saw the score line. It was 1-0, then 2-0, and then obviously the result at the end stayed that way. I've got a couple of bits on Stockport, but on Cambridge, it is just a good win for them, and that's all they can do because, let's face it, they're a long way off. They're right at the bottom of the table, obviously. Shrewsbury and Crawley in the past couple of weeks have sort of taken a step back in that race and conceded that pole position in terms of the teams trying to get out of the relegation zone to Burton. But they're in that fight, and Cambridge have sort of put themselves back in that mix, even though I think it is. Well, I don't even think it is. It is a really big hill to climb. But they're in the fight, and that's the important thing. It's a feel-good moment. Perhaps they're getting ready for next season, to allude a little bit to what we'll say about the manager, the new manager, just a second. But a win's a win, and it's an impressive one against a Stockport team who were on a really good run of form heading into this one.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of Cambridge, perhaps it's coming. I think the 2 goals came in the first half, courtesy of Josh Stokes, a 20-year-old left winger. You mentioned there in terms of preparing for next year. I think he will certainly be one to keep an eye out. I imagine he'd stay over the summer and perhaps be a shining light in League Two. But yeah, playing as a left winger, grabbed the 2 goals on 9 and 43 minutes respectively, and then they just held out in that second half. Sort of saw the result out. Stockport could have easily, given the quality they have, could have easily perhaps got something from the game. But Cambridge did really well to hold on to the result, and what result it was. We'll come to that point in a second, but just while we're on Cambridge, appointed, we spoke about it in the preview episode, appointing Neil Harris as manager and Mark Bonner as director of football. I think that one, we mentioned this last week actually. Two managers, 2 people that have been involved with the club before. Is that an overall good thing in terms of going forward for the club?
I know when we spoke about it, they were the 2 at the top of the betting odds, weren't they? It was Neil Harris and Mark Bonner. Well, they got both of them, didn't they? One in as manager, one as director of football. And it's interesting. You mentioned you expect it to be either internal or someone coming back. I think we both sort of agreed in that regard. And that is what's happened in the end. I think it's probably a good appointment. And with Mark Bonner as director of football, it's a nice cohesive unit, the 2 of them. And they know the club, they know the league, they know League Two, which I think is where it is going. I don't think that is anything will be their fault come the end of the season. It will be obviously the fault of everything that's come before them. But it's a little bit, I think it's preparing for League Two in a way, as awful that is to Cambridge. Doesn't know we have many Cambridge fans listening that sort of we always seem to drum them and sort of downplay them, but they are bottom of the league for a reason, aren't they? But it seems like they are preparing a little bit for League Two. A couple of managers there who know the club, as I say, and have that experience, that know-how, and can get them out of League Two straight away. It's a possibility if they go down that they will be able to bounce straight back. That being said, obviously a great start in League One, though. Yeah, I don't expect it to end nicely.
Yeah, a great impact, as you said. In terms of Stockport, they were 7 games unbeaten before this one, including 6 victories in that one. And the matter of the fact is that they've dropped points against the side bottom of the league, which Dave Tanner will be really disappointed with.
Yeah, they were helped a little bit by Leyton, Orient and Huddersfield also losing, but it still obviously is a concern. In terms of the stats, they had 60% possession to 40, 5 shots on target to 2, so both shots on target were scored by Cambridge in the game, and 18-4 in terms of the shots overall. But the one that stood out for me was the XG. I know you read out some XG stats last week, so I thought I'd join in. Cambridge, a 2-0 win, they had 0.17 expected goals, and Stockport had, or County, had 1.87, so almost 2 XG, and they didn't manage to get on the score sheet. So that will be disappointing, and it will be a knock back, and they'll just hope that it doesn't continue, really. They've got Blackpool next. So that they'll just be hoping that they can bounce back immediately is always the important thing. But in the game, I mentioned earlier I spoke to Wigan's Football League world writer. I spoke to Stockport's too, Isaac Strong, and he said the red card is worth picking out. That was a bit of a nightmare, is how he described it, in terms of Callum Connolly getting sent off for second yellow in added time, because it only leaves the one recognised centre-half due to injuries and that suspension. We talked about Leyton Orient be struggling for centre-half, so Stockport have it too. Brad Hill's the only recognised defender, central defender, and they're stretched in that department, which is a real kick in the teeth a little bit with that red card coming so late on, and obviously not needed because the game was already done at that point. And the other thing, the goalkeeper Corey Adai, who came in the summer in this game for the injury to Hinchcliffe, and not a good return, is it? You come in and you lose 2-0, and the XG indicates that perhaps he was at fault, or that he could have done more. I can't say I've had the time to watch it back, looking at the stats instead. But it's his first League One start since a 5-0 loss back in November. And I was at, obviously, when they played Lincoln, it was October, actually, Halloween weekend. And he played the first half and got subbed off at half-time, not because of injury. He just got subbed off at half-time. And that was our sort of introduction to him. And perhaps he's on a similar vein there. He's not adjusted to life at Stockport, even after a great season last season in League Two at Crawley. But yeah, he's just not adjusted to life at Stockport, and it continues to be a bit of a concern in that department. But overall, as we mentioned, the bad red card, that issue with the goalkeeper, it's just a really bad result, this one all round. And they'll just need, though, to put it in the rearview mirror and carry on, as difficult as that might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And red card, right at the end as well, that red card. So almost silly, you're right, with the game sort of gone. No need for it, really. In terms of the results elsewhere, Reading drew 0-0 with Birmingham. And that's the first time Birmingham have dropped points since they drew with Wrexham in January. Blackpool beat Crawley 3-1 at home. Finally a win, I guess, because Blackpool have got so many draws in the past few weeks. And that was despite having 10 men actually reflected with the red card. I saw the red card go in at the time, and I did think that Crawley, given that they've got a little bit of form about them, Crawley might have taken advantage, but no, not to be.
That was really quite impressive, wasn't it? I mean, they are the draw specialists, aren't they? The Blackpool, they've got an unbelievable record in terms of how many games they're drawing, but they won and they scored after the red card. It was between half an hour, 40 minutes. It was early on in the game, but they managed to hang on, and I think that's a really big boost for Blackpool. And they play Stockport next, who we've just mentioned, and that's a game you probably look at. We could get something out of it. Stockport just losing. That perhaps Blackpool think they can do something in that game as well, and they're on a good run. Even if all these, they've been drawing a lot of games, they're not losing games. But a win against Crawley was important. They needed a win, even after all these draws.
Yeah, absolutely. Meanwhile, Charlton keeping the pressure on the playoffs with a 3-0 win at home against Exeter. Shrewsbury not to be for Gavin Ainsworth's side this week, as they are defeated by Stevenage. Classic 1-0, Stevenage's favourite scoreline, I think, seems to be.
They either win or lose 1-0, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, no, either piece. And Wycombe and Wigan, the two Ws of the division, drawing 0-0. So the top two both drawing 0-0 this Saturday. As for Sunday afternoon, we're recording this Sunday morning. Mansfield are hosting Wrexham. First of all, why is it Sunday afternoon? I have no idea. But how do you see this one? Obviously, Wrexham towards the top. If Wrexham manage a win, as I mentioned earlier, they'll be the only side in the top six to clinch victory this weekend. Mansfield need a win, though.
Well, I'm happy to do two takes because I'm assuming this will go out after the game. I'm happy to say Wrexham are going to win and then pause and say Mansfield are going to win. And then if it's a draw, I'm wrong in both counts. But you imagine Wrexham will pick up the victory, don't you? And I'm ready for this take to be outdated by the time it is brought to your eyes and ears. But Mansfield on a bad run for a reason. They're really struggling. They looked off it against Lincoln on Tuesday night. And I expect Wrexham to have too much for them here, even if Wrexham's away form hasn't exactly been as good as their league position suggests, because they've been that good at home. But they need a win, Wrexham, and just to put their head above the parapet a little bit with those other teams around them all losing or dropping points. they can put themselves in the mix, and that could be a big victory. And that, though, you might be playing on their minds a little bit heading into it, in that they know everybody else has lost or drawn, that they know it's a real opportunity, and that could perhaps be a working the other way. They're professional footballers. They should be able to block that sort of noise out. And Mansfield, they need a win that I don't see it happening in this one.
Yeah,
but I'm happy to do my next take where I say
yeah,
I do.
Yeah,
just in case.
and cuts. Yeah.
How about you, though? Have it.
Yeah, I think Wrexham will get this one. I know Mansfield need a win, and results haven't been favourable in their side, but I think Wrexham will have the quality, and I think they'll just have too much for Mansfield. I can only really see it going one way. Sorry, Mansfield fans. So Wrexham for me on Sunday evening. Of course, bad time. This has been released. You know the score. So let's hope we are right. Probably not, but let's hope. There's a reason we don't do the preview podcast, by the way. We just stick to the review. That is it, I think, for this week. Thanks to Jamie, as ever, for joining. We shall be back same time next week. Meanwhile, Sam and Callum will be back to preview next weekend's games. And we will return with the review episodes same time next week. In the meantime, have a great week.